Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel if you've been here before, and welcome if you're new. I'm EDJ, and we are continuing with Epic History TV's series on the Napoleonic Wars. So, yeah, in the confusing order that Epic History TV, uploaded the Napoleon series, next came after the Battle of Vienna. Last time, next comes the Battle of Eylau? Shilau, Hilau, Daylau, whatever. But either way, this is the next one, and in terms of like upload order, this is one of his most recent ones, just a few months ago. So yeah, like I said, luckily I've had a lot of cool people basically direct me and help me get this back chronologically. So yeah, so. What do I know about the Battle of Eylau? I know that this is because Prussia refused to give up even though Napoleon basically blitzkrieged them, and Davout, whooped their... I can't get over the last episode, guys, the Battle of Vienna. That felt like... I feel like Epic History TV should just rename that video Davout Smashes Prussia. Like, he literally became the main character for a second. I was like, who's Napoleon, Napoleon felt like a side character in his own series for a second. So, yeah, point is, after being, decimated, essentially, Frederick William moved closer to Russia in hopes that Russian support can help him still win the war. And what I know is that at this time, winter had already kind of come and set. And so, instead of I don't know how common it was to fight in winter, but instead of waiting out winter until spring, because I've heard some wars, usually people wait during winter and then resume during spring. But either way, instead of doing that, Russia just attacked during the winter because, Russians, right? They're the masters of fighting in the winter. I'm just joking, but essentially they attacked Napoleon, and this resulted in conflicts. And then the Battle of Eylau is essentially where blizzard. It was a blizzard for the most part. Like, people could barely see what the heck was going on. It was super cold and freezing, and quite frankly, not ideal fighting conditions at all for any side. But, either way it happened. And technically, Napoleon wins this battle, but in my opinion, it kind of just felt like both sides just kind of just survived. It didn't feel like a decisive victory, like Austerlitz or any. It just felt kind of like it felt like I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, but I think you guys know where I'm getting at. It felt like just a nightmare that everyone was lucky to survive for the most part. And I know Murat is really important in this battle. I believe he led a cavalry charge, which is the main thing when I hear about when people talk about this battle, that Murat really, really stepped up, so we'll see. Either way, that's kind of about the whole situation I know. Without any further ado, but first, if you want to watch his original video, that I do not own, by the way, I will never claim that this is my work. I wish, but I wish I could make something this cool. But yeah, if you want to watch his original video by Epic History TV, the link will be down in the description down below. Always support and give respect to the original creators, that's what I try to do. And yeah, without any further ado, let's just get right into it. Let's watch Napoleon and the Battle of Eylau, or Eylau. We'll find out.
January 1807. French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, victor of Ulm, Austerlitz and Jena, was near the height of his powers. His Grande Armée had swept all before it. Now, in the depths of a bitter Polish winter, he sought the final victory that would make him master of Europe. His target? The Russians, supported by the remains of the Prussian army. But many months of campaigning had exhausted even his toughest veterans. Most had not seen France in years, and the war in Poland seemed to offer only freezing mud, hunger, and a stubborn enemy who did not know when he was beaten. At Poltusk, the Russians had fought courageously and thwarted Napoleon's first attempt to outmaneuver their army. But another opportunity would soon emerge. Command of the Russian army had recently passed to General Levin August von Bennigsen. Despite his German name and Hanoverian roots, he was a veteran of 34 years' service with the Imperial Russian Army. On the 27th of January, with 77,000 Russians and 13,000 Prussians, Bennigsen launched a surprise winter offensive, targeting Marshal Ney's exposed 6th Corps. But Ney escaped, and Bernadotte's 1st Corps fought a successful rearguard action at Moringen. Now Napoleon would turn the tables on Bennigsen. As soon as he'd learned of the Russian advance, he'd begun planning a grand encirclement of the enemy. Suddenly, it was the Russians who were exposed. But Bennigsen got wind of Napoleon's trap just in time and began a hurried withdrawal. 5 days of relentless marching followed, with Marshal Murat's vanguard nipping at the Russians' heels all the way. But despite a series of furious assaults on their rearguard, ably commanded by Prince Bagration, the French could not break through. The pursuit continued, even as temperatures plummeted. To the north, Ney shadowed Lestocq's Prussian Corps, while Soult's 4th Corps followed the Russian rearguard to the small East Prussian town of Eylau. On the afternoon of the 7th of February, Marshal Soult's troops advanced up the icy road to Eylau. They found it held by General Barclay de Tolly's Russian division, entrenched along a line of fences, ditches, and barricades. Just before dusk, confused combat began around the town's cemetery. More and more troops were sucked into the bitter fighting. The French took the cemetery with a bayonet charge, but then had to hold it against a determined Russian counterattack, led by Barclay himself, who was seriously wounded by grape shot. Vicious street fighting continued well into the night, but the French ultimately prevailed, with the loss of 4,000 casualties on each side.
Yeah, just brutal. I know this battle was just
Soldiers and
brutal.
officers alike were astonished by the savagery of the engagement. As darkness fell, temperatures dropped dramatically. Many of the wounded froze to death where they had fallen. The French ransacked Eylau for food and firewood. Many Russian soldiers had to sleep in open fields, wrapped only in their greatcoats, forbidden to light fires. That night, Napoleon's greatest concern was that the Russians would slip away under cover of darkness, robbing him of the decisive battle he craved. He need not have worried. Bennigsen was done running. Here, at Eylau, the Russians would make their stand. Is something interfering with your happiness, or preventing you from achieving your goals?
What the heck?
If so, therapy can be a valuable tool in helping you to live a happier, more full...
Sorry about skipping that. I was not... That caught me off guard for a second. I was like, holy, what the... I'm not used to Epic History TV making ads, like, in the earlier part of the videos. At least I usually wait till the end. Wow. Either way. But yeah, I think just, like... Yeah, the Battle of Eylau, just, like... Fighting in general is obviously always brutal. But there is something about this battle that's just really bloody and, like... Like, everyone's, like... even though Napoleon, like, you could say, like, yeah, wins, it's just, like, it felt like a victory, more like we survived rather than we won, you know? This is, like, awful. And it's like, you're not just fighting the enemy, you're fighting the elements, man. Like, cold, it's like, oh, snap. Like, you're at war with, like, you know, the elements that's, like, murdering you, and then, like, the enemy. And I'm pretty sure there is a blizzard in this battle, which just makes everything worse. Ugh. It was a vast hurricane of death that seemed to smash and erase from the face of the earth everything in its path.
Before dawn, Napoleon was on Eylau's cemetery knoll, trying to make out the Russian lines through his telescope. He was surprised by what he saw. 67,000 Russians, packed into two great lines along a 3-mile front, with well-defended villages anchoring both flanks. Open ground lay between the two armies, providing a clear field of fire for Bennigsen's 400 guns, a huge amount of artillery for an army of the age. Napoleon had Soult and Augereau's depleted corps, plus the Imperial Guard and Murat's reserve cavalry, just 45,000 men and 137 guns.
Yeah,
but Napoleon was expecting Davout's Third Corps,
Davout
15,000 men, to arrive at any moment, in perfect position to fall on the Russian flank.
Third Corps. No, I'm joking. Yeah, I've become quite a fan of Davout. Like, sorry, I'll stop.
At dawn, as French troops were still getting into position, hundreds of Russian guns opened a massive bombardment. In Eylau, there was chaos, as round shot crashed through buildings and tore through men. French guns soon answered the Russians in kind. It was the largest combined artillery bombardment the world had yet seen. It lasted nearly 3 hours. While Bennigsen had quantity, French crews were more experienced, and against the densely packed Russian lines, they couldn't miss. Meanwhile, Davout's two leading divisions arrived on the battlefield, dangerously placed on the Russian left flank. But before they could attack, Prince Golitsyn struck first with his cavalry brigade. Davout's veterans threw back the horsemen with disciplined fire.
Heck yeah, they did.
Golitsyn's charge, however, bought time for General Bagavout to reorganize his defensive line to face the new threat. When the Iron Marshal attacked around 8 AM, he found the enemy entrenched on a ridge with formidable artillery support. Davout's lead division was mauled, suffering 1,500 casualties as it was thrown back. This check on Davout alarmed Napoleon. He feared the Russians might withdraw before his trap could close. It was, he decided, the battle's critical moment. Orders flew out to Marshal Augereau's 7th Corps and General Saint-Hilaire's division. They were to launch a frontal attack against the enemy. At all costs, the Russians' escape must be prevented.
Let me show you how we do stuff around here.
Actually, my department uses Monday.com, so I'm good.
All was disorder, confusion, stupor under an avalanche of blows. Augereau's corpse.
The 49-year-old Marshal Augereau had been with Napoleon since his first command in Italy and the brilliant campaign of '96. But he was deeply unwell that morning. At 10 AM, strapped to his horse, he led forward the 12,000 troops of 7th Corps. just as heavy snow began to fall.
Oh, that sucks.
With visibility down to a few feet, Augereau's divisions drifted off course, straight into the murderous artillery duel.
Oh god.
French and Russian cannonballs.
Oh, that's a nightmare. Oh gosh.
Tore through their ranks. Augereau's men pushed on doggedly. But as they neared the Russian line, the blizzard suddenly lifted. One division found itself facing
Holy
70
crap.
Russian guns at a range of just 30 yards.
That's a nightmare, like, legitimately. Imagine you're hauling yourself through that, and then you don't know where the heck you're going, but people are getting shot around you, and in the moment everything clears, you turn your head and a few feet away there's a freaking cannon at your face. Oh, dude, that's... Oh, poor Augereau, man. I don't even blame Augereau for that. That's not... You know, like... Who could have handled that situation? Like, that was an awful situation to be in. I don't think anyone could have handled that. Like, I don't blame Augereau is all I'm saying. Like, that was just the worst timing, the worst luck. Like, I feel bad. He was put in an awful position already, so... Yeah, poor Augereau, man.
Seconds later, its forward ranks were obliterated by Russian canister. Another French division broke through the enemy line, only to be surrounded on three sides by Russian bayonets and annihilated. Augereau's horse was killed under him, leaving him badly injured. As the survivors of his corps stumbled back the way they'd come, Russian cavalry and infantry surged forward. Units were overrun, entire regiments swallowed up. Order and discipline collapsed. One of the few units to maintain order was the 14th Infantry, nicknamed the Brave for its heroic role at Rivoli 10 years before. But now they were outnumbered and surrounded. The regiment resisted bravely, but was cut to pieces, suffering 75% casualties and the loss of its Eagle standard. In the space of just 30 minutes, the Russians inflicted 5,000 casualties on Augereau's 7th Corps.
Yeah, 7th Corps got demolished, and like I said, I've, been pretty, I like to think that I try to, be objective in this series, and, I give praise where it is, and, I like to give praise where it's due, and then kind of, be I guess criticize when mistakes are made, but I can't even criticize, the 7th Corps and Augereau. They, like I said, they just got screwed by, the elements, and that's just that's just awful, and I don't blame him. I don't think anyone could have handled that situation that well, he had to go, and he just, oh man, that's the biggest, disaster so far we see with Napoleon, at least with the Grand Army at its peak. That's the biggest, I guess, fumble you could say. And yeah, oh, that's awful. I feel so bad for 7th Corps guys. That is the worst situation ever.
Effectively, it had ceased to exist.
Oh, dang.
It was one of the worst battlefield disasters of the Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah,
For
complete
the French,
disaster.
Eylau was no longer a fight for victory, but a struggle for survival.
Yeah, this is just to survive. This isn't like all the other battles. Are you going to let those fellows devour us? Napoleon to Marshal Murat. Okay, this is Murat's moment, I guess?
From Eylau's cemetery knoll, Napoleon watched the catastrophe engulfing Augereau's corps. He knew he must stabilize the situation immediately, and buy time to reorganize his centre, and for Davout's corps to arrive in force. So the Emperor turned to Murat and his large cavalry reserve. It was a desperate gamble. The horses were tired and suffering from the cold. They'd be outnumbered and unsupported by infantry. But the flamboyant, apparently fearless Marshal Murat was undaunted. He assembled 40 squadrons of cavalry, 5,000 dragoons and cuirassiers, and led them forward. So began one of the legendary cavalry charges of the Napoleonic Wars. Unable to move much faster than a walk due to the terrible conditions, Murat's cavalry nevertheless presented a formidable wall of men, horses and steel. General Grouchy's dragoons, in the lead, drove back the advancing Russians. D'Hautpoul's steel-clad cuirassiers then thundered forward on their giant horses.
Yeah, they were so close to Napoleon. Like, they were getting there. Like, this really... I know mainly, like, yeah, Murat's charge is, like, really, like, the highlight of this situation, of this battle.
Finding a gap between two Russian divisions, they used it to pry open the enemy line. With seemingly unstoppable momentum, the riders surged forward. But it could not last. As they neared Bennigsen's headquarters, a Russian battery blasted the French horsemen with canister. D'Hautpoul himself was mortally wounded. French momentum was lost. As the Russian counterattack began, Murat ordered his squadrons to regroup and pull back. He almost didn't make it. The Russian 4th Division had moved to block his escape. Seeing this, Napoleon ordered Marshal Bessières to lead forward the Guard cavalry. These were 2,000 of the finest cavalry in Europe, and to cheers of "Vive l'Empereur!" they advanced into the whirling mass of shot and snow. When Colonel Lepic saw his men ducking, he called out, "Heads up, by God! Those are bullets, not turds." Chasseurs of the Guard charged down the first Russian infantry square they met, scattered the enemy's gunners, and cut out a path for Murat's retreating squadrons. The French charge at Eylau would go down as one of the boldest, most desperate military maneuvers of the age. The losses were terrible in men and horses, but it succeeded in its mission. The Russian advance had been stopped in its tracks, and the initiative had swung back to Napoleon.
No wonder Steve Garvey wants to block
Dang,
his progressive agenda and supports building Trump's border wall. Garvey stands for
Dude,
Trump.
whoever made unskippable YouTube ads is the worst human being
Steve
ever.
Garvey is too conservative for California.
Yo, I'm loving this outfit from Stitch
Oh my
Fix.
gosh.
This look is definitely.
Yeah, it comes across like cavalries would really just save Napoleon, man. Like, that was... It stabilized a really bad situation. Because they had the complete disaster with Augereau, and then it really fell onto Murat there, and just the cavalry divisions to kind of stabilize the situation. But yeah. Yeah, this is just a complete mess. All attention on both sides was now was now revealed on Davout. Oh no, now Davout and our left wing. The situation did not appear very rosy. Yeah, that's putting it nicely, Dennis.
Marshal Davout's 3rd Corps, the famed heroes of Auerstedt 4 months before, had now arrived in sufficient force to launch a full-scale assault. Anticipating this, Bagavout withdrew to a new defensive line on the Kriegerberge, a dominating height perfect for artillery. 2 hours of chaotic fighting followed, with every French advance challenged by a fierce Russian counterattack. But supported by dragoons and Saint-Hilaire's division, 3rd Corps slowly ground down the enemy. Bennigsen was forced to send in his last reserve, Kaminsky's 14th Division. Supported by cavalry, it drove the French from Klein-Sausgarten and across the fields beyond until its own advance was checked by French artillery.
Hey, man.
When Davout resumed his attack at 3 p.m, the Russian line buckled. The Kriegerberge was taken.
Man, Davout, he is impressive, man. Like, I am impressed by him.
So too Bennigsen's headquarters at Auklappen. Bennigsen scraped together enough units to improvise a new defensive line, but French guns, hauled up to the Kriegerberge, opened up a devastating fire. The French pressure was irresistible. The Russian flank would surely collapse at any moment, handing Napoleon the decisive victory he so desperately sought. All that was required was one final push.
Good God, the Prussians are here too. Oh no.
Early that morning, Bennigsen had sent urgent orders to Prussian General Anton von Lestock to join the main army with his corps as quickly as possible. Although nearly 70, Lestock was still as energetic as he'd been serving under Frederick the Great, and was assisted by a highly capable chief of staff, Colonel Gerhard von Scharnhorst.
Man, these old people in these videos, first Wormser and now this dude, like, there's just like, I'm interested to see how he performs.
Lestock's corps, 9,000 men, was 8 miles northwest of Eylau, closely watched by Marshal Ney's 6th Corps. His orders were to prevent the Prussians linking up with the Russians at all costs. But by force-marching his troops along frozen, hilly country roads, Lestock was able to bypass Ney's blocking force. To Bennigsen's joy, by early afternoon, the Prussians had reached Schmödeten. With his left flank crumbling, there was no time to lose. At 4 p.m, Lestock's Prussians charged forward. By now, Davout's men had been marching and fighting for many hours, and were utterly spent. They managed a few ragged volleys, before they turned and ran. Russian cavalry followed in pursuit. Marshal Davout, with just one intact division left, prepared to make a stand on the Kriegerberge. "The brave," he shouted, "will find a glorious death here." Fortunately for Davout, the enemy's attacks were poorly coordinated, and his 40-gun battery inflicted terrible losses.
Okay, we love to see that. Okay, I like Davout's discipline, because he covered so much ground, like right there. He fought his way there, but thanks to Lestock and just the freshness of the Prussian soldiers who had not known, you know, who were, like I said, fresh, push him basically back, but nah, he recovered. I really like that, like, oh no, I really like that.
Around 5:30, as dusk fell, Ney's corps arrived in pursuit of the Prussians and took Schlödeten. This new threat forced Bennigsen to call off his attack on Davout. And as darkness descended, the day's slaughter finally came to an end.
matter where one looked, one saw nothing but corpses and beheld men dragging themselves over the ground. One heard nothing but heart-rending cries. I went away horror-struck. Yeah.
Since Napoleon had crowned himself emperor in 1804, every campaign, every battle he'd waged, had ended in brilliant success. No longer.
Yeah, that's the thing, though. Yeah, Napoleon since he had become emperor, was just like on one. He was like on this like brilliant like streak, and these battles were so impressive. And here, you know, it's just like a complete fight for survival. It's not like him mopping the floor with his enemies. It's more like them like punching each other repeatedly, trying both like at their like limit, still trying to keep going, you know? It's like watching two boxers fight. I did boxing, by the way. When I was younger, I know how to box, so that's why I use that thing. But yeah, it's like where both sides are just completely down, and you're just trying to use every little reserve you can. And yeah, this battle at this point, Napoleon wasn't probably at his best, but in all fairness, no one was. I think it's just the conditions, because I know immediately after this, you know, Napoleon gets back up, you know, rebounds with the Battle of Friedland, that's next. So, yeah, I kind of blame this due to the elements and, you know, the general war-torn fatigue that, the French were facing. But yeah, not everyone was at their best at this moment due to many factors, I think. And it's just amazing at all that they're even fighting, that they're even doing as well as they're doing, considering this, you know.
Bennigsen, learning the true scale of his army's losses and its critical shortage of ammunition, withdrew overnight. The French were left holding a frozen, corpse-strewn battlefield, allowing Napoleon to claim a victory.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like a victory. It just feels like, oh, thank God we survived, you know?
But in reality, Eylau had been a murderous slaughter, without a winner. As Marshal Ney exclaimed on seeing the battlefield, "What a massacre!" And without result. Exact casualty figures are unknown, due to the chaos and conditions of the battle and the scale of loss. But it is likely that the Russians lost 20,000 men, killed, wounded or captured. The French, perhaps as many as 25,000.
Oh my gosh.
What is clear is that thousands of French veterans, the victors of Ulm, Austerlitz and Jena, met their end on the snowy fields of East Prussia. Napoleon's Grande Armée would go on to achieve many more great victories, including a crushing victory over Bennigsen's Russians at Friedland 4 months later.
Yeah, like I said, Napoleon, at least in this battle in particular, no one was at their best, but I feel like it's just because of the elements and the factors. You know, like no one could be at their best, especially with the awful blizzard conditions. Because the Battle of Friedland, he gets back up and rebounds and like decimates them, but yeah, that's the thing with Napoleon. It's like the rest of Europe was tag teaming him essentially most of his reign, especially near the end. And even though he inflicted a lot of heavy, you know, casualties on them, it's almost like, yeah, the rest of Europe still combined will always outnumber, you know, the French. Napoleon couldn't, like, you know, like, rely on that so much because, like, from just these constant wars he's in, he's losing so much, like, men and, like, you know, like, just, it's amazing France had, like, as much power as it did to keep fighting, because just so many people died, and I don't think Napoleon could completely rely, because eventually it caught up with him, the constant, you know, the losses he endured from cavalry to, you know, men, and then you know, eventually he had to rely on conscripts, and though he kept winning battles, it's like, eventually it caught up with him, and that's unfortunate. You know, I said the war of the... Wait, give me a second. Yeah, sorry about that. I have pizza right here. Yeah, the war of the... What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the War of the Third Coalition was, like, France, I think, at its best. Like, you know, in terms of, like, the veterans he had, the... You know, the skill and genius Napoleon was portraying, their tactics and strategy. Just everyone was at their A game. And then from, like, here, you kind of see... I guess in this battle, it kind of shows just that being depleted. This is the first big instance of him losing a lot. And it'll continue, you know, with the Peninsula War in Spain and just the further invasion, the other war he's gonna have with Austria. And then, you know, eventually the inevitable invasion of Russia, which just completely broke him. But yeah, you just see, like, you know, him just losing all of that. And at the end, yeah, it just caught up with him. Like, he lost a lot of people even he couldn't replace, you know? So, I don't know. It's unfortunate, but yeah, like, France was depleting a lot in its resources and stuff.
But after the brutal losses of Eylau, it was never the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you to the artists.
Yeah, so that's it. So yeah, I kind of said everything I needed to say. Just complete bloodbath. That's what it felt like. And I don't even blame anyone, because, like, yeah, this was just the worst scenario to ever fight in, I think. You know? But yeah, that's about it. So yeah, I guess I'll be seeing you guys next time with Friedland. Either way, I'll see you then. I won't ramble anymore. Bye, everyone.